All set, good to go again.
Welcome to Our Town, Our Story, a weekly podcast celebrating the inspirational journeys of people in our community. I'm Dr. Phil Wirth, and today I'm here with Vince and Sarah Enos. They've taken the time to join me tonight, and thank you, you guys. Last week on my podcast, I had a guest that had some issues with alcohol as a young man, and immediately I thought of Vince and his journey. He has come so far over the past years that I really wanted to share his story with you guys. Vince, Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Phil.
Hello.
Vince, where do you want to start?
I don't know. One of the reasons I met Phil, or I met you, was because I knew I was an alcoholic. I drank for 40 years, and the doctor that I was going to, we were the same age. And I knew that I was going to have health problems in the future, so I needed a doctor that was younger than me.
Perfect.
So that when I was, aging out, there would be someone there who knew me and, my health. Even though you didn't know I was an alcoholic, I knew I was, and, I could see the writing on the wall because I wasn't willing to stop drinking. That was not ever in the picture.
When we first met each other, it would have been 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
As I was looking back, and to be 100% honest, I had no idea. I would have never guessed in a million years that you had issues with alcohol. And as you got to open up about stuff, there was a lot, right? There was a lot.
Yeah, I wasn't your typical alcoholic, but then none of us are. I mean, most alcoholics aren't the, guys, the homeless guys, in a trench coat and a brown paper bag. They're, everyone out in the community, just like you and me. Most of us have jobs and, a lot of professionals, people. And then at one point, a switch flips and we're not functional anymore. And that's exactly what happened to me. Mine was just long and drawn out. It was 40 years. Some people do it in 10, some people do it in 5. Mine was just extremely painful, and that was the plan for me. Unfortunately, I missed out on a lot, and my kids never really saw me sober. But that was God's plan, and I believe that, and I know that now.
As you were looking back, I knew you for 10 years, and it's probably been the last, 4 or 5, where you started to open up and admit to me that, geez, I think I have a little bit of a problem. When you start to admit that problem and then go to the point where I'm done, how do you get there?
Well, you were the first person that I told that I was an alcoholic. But even at that point, I wasn't really ready to do anything about it. It was steps in, I was just manipulating everyone in my life in that point, because alcoholics are great manipulators. We'll do whatever it takes, not to stop drinking, because we can't. I mean, we can't stop drinking. It's not a matter of will. It's not a matter of choice. We are beyond human aid. And, all the sorries, I used those all up. Nobody cared about sorries anymore. Nobody cared what I had to say. So I had to take some action, and one of my first actions, and I was really sick, and one of my first actions was to go to you and, get a health check, see where I was physically. Anyway, see how much longer I could go. So that was the first step. And the other step was to go to therapy. Then I wore that out, and then I had to go to AA. Again, just manipulating the system. As long as I was telling everybody I was getting help, that was better than sorries. They would just let me go. I'm trying. And, I could drink. And that was really, that's where things got really bad, because I was kind of given more liberty to drink because everybody thought I was getting help. So I could do it a little more openly. As ironic as that sounds, that's what happened. And that's when, for 4 years, you know, it was just a living hell. It was 24/7 drinking. It was a couple of rehabs, and I just wanted to die. Every night that I went to bed, I was just hoping that I didn't wake up in the morning. And that's how life was. It was extremely painful for 4 years. That was my bottom. Some people have a hard bottom. They go to jail. They get divorced. You know, their kids hate them or whatever. Mine was just 4 years of hell.
Sarah, what do you remember about that stretch, right? It sounds like and you were trying to figure it out, but maybe lying to yourself and maybe trying to figure it out to hold your marriage and your relationships with the people who you really cared about together, right? Sarah, what do you remember about, that version of dad as you're going through this?
I remember it sucking. I do remember just he'd come in to work till maybe noon if he could last that long, and then home and just drunk the rest of the day. We've always been really close, so our relationship was not great during that time, which was sad because I wasn't really used to not having my dad, and then finding out that he was really never like sober, even when I thought he was growing up. But it was tough to watch as well because there's nothing you can say, there's nothing you can do, and I tried hard sometimes to just be like, what the hell? Basically, can't you get it together, whatever. But yeah, I remember him not. It's almost not like really being a person, kind of just like existing.
When talking to other therapists, other friends, right? There's a time when you're not talking to dad, right? You're talking to the disease.
Yeah.
It is alcohol and the alcoholism that you're talking to. Did you feel that way? Like Jesus isn't really my dad? When he was in that bad spot for a few years?
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, I was just kind of angry about it, and but sad at the same time, that there was just nothing I could say, nothing I could do that would get him to stop, basically, or to see that he just it wasn't it wasn't functional. He wasn't the same as I remember him being. But I mean, ultimately, I did know that wasn't his true self. So it's hard. It
Yeah.
was hard. Yeah.
Sometimes impossible, right? I
Yeah.
think as
Yeah.
kids, we all put our parents way up on this pedestal because they're the greatest things that have ever happened. And the reality is, all of us are flawed, right?
Yeah.
We're not as perfect as we pretend to be to our children as we grow up. Vince, what was the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will? When do you finally hit that point where you're like, I need to get into a rehab and I got to fix this?
Well, I'd been going to AA for a few years, and this is a really selfish disease, and it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. And I went to this rehab at Karen in Pennsylvania. It's a great rehab, straight up 12-step program, so I understood it pretty well. And everyone there wanted to get sober. They weren't a lot of people weren't mandated. They weren't a bunch of kids. These people were serious about their sobriety, and it was a great rehab. And I got a lot out of that. And I just had an epiphany, one of a couple really, and I just thought, I can't leave my family with the mess that I've created, because I had my own business. I was uh, fairly successful. I always hit all my goals. Always, did everything I put my mind to, even under the influence. But I couldn't stop drinking. I couldn't understand that. It's just that I just couldn't stop. And if I could stop, I couldn't stay stopped. And I just decided that I couldn't leave my family with this mess, and have them have to clean it up. Even in death, I couldn't put them out in the streets. And I thought, I've got to somehow get this together and, you know, take care of all this chaos. And so I started taking AA seriously. I knew the steps. I knew the people in AA, but knowledge, you can have all the knowledge in the world you want about this disease, but that's not going to help you. This is, you have to actually do the work, go through the steps, do all the things that you're uncomfortable doing, if you want to kick this disease. And you're never cured, but you do overcome the desire. So when they talk about you're a recovered alcoholic, you're only ever recovered from the obsession to drink. But I know that if I ever pick up a drink, I'm going to be right back where I was. I've tried that experiment too many times to 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 even kid myself that I can have one drink or drink like a normal person. This is a disease. When I drink, my body acts differently than other people.
When you were at that rehab and you mentioned, geez, it was a good rehab, and it sounds like you had been through a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a person or a teacher, or was it the group? When I do what I do, I think about ignition, right? What's the thing that I say to somebody or that happens that makes somebody make a change that leads them to a much better place in their life? Was there a moment for you where you went, aha? Or was it a cumulative amount of moments, or a person? What was the thing?
It was all of that. They've got, like I said, it was a straight up, 12-step program. You went through the first 4 steps in that program, and it was the idea that everyone was serious about it, and the counselors and the whole staff. Everything was just, they were just straight up serious about it. There was no kidding around. I think everyone on the staff was a recovered addict, so they could relate, because if you're not a recovering addict or alcoholic, then you're not going to understand how I feel or how another addict feels. You're incapable of it because you've never had that desire. It's like me trying to tell a woman what it feels like to have a baby inside of me. I cannot do it. It's not, I can be empathetic, and I can I can tell them that I know how you feel, but I don't. I will never be able to understand it because I'll never be able to feel another human growing inside of me. So for a non-addict to tell me that they know how I feel just before I'm going to pick up a drink, you don't know how I feel. You don't know what I'm going through. So, and
It's hard.
that's the difference.
As we've talked over the years, you talk a lot about the 12 steps and the process that you go through, and talk a little bit about that. What some people, kind of poo-poo that their whole life as they're struggling with things, but you really made a connection with this. And on our walk last week, you shared that, geez, I use this in so many different aspects of my life now. What do you want to share about that?
Yeah, the 12-step program is that there's no downside to it, and you can use it for anything. That's probably why there's 30 different groups, 30 different programs that are all 12-step. And every self-help book I've ever read, and I've read tons of them, they're all based on the 12 steps, and probably most religion are based on them. And you can apply any problem you have in your life to one of the 12 steps to try to figure it out, the first step, I admitted I'm powerless over whatever, and my life has become unmanageable. Whether it's gambling or sex or food or whatever, if you're powerless over it and you can't stop eating or you can't stop gambling or you can't stop heroining, your life is going to be unmanageable, and because you can't stop thinking about it. So that's the first step. You have to admit you have a problem. The second step is came to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. Well, the insanity of it is the obsession. If you're obsessed over anything, and you, you, your life is going to be unmanageable. And if you're going to continue to do something that you know is going to hurt you, then that's insanity. If you know, but if you can't stop it, then you need a power greater than yourself to help you stop it. And you have
No
to
matter
give it
what the
up,
no matter what the
no
problem
matter
is.
what the problem
Yeah.
is.
Sarah, does he talk to you a little bit about these things now and say, hey, look at where the 12 steps might apply to this customer or that problem at work or this other thing, and how can we get around it?
Yeah, so he says a lot. Everybody needs a 12-step program, pretty much. But yeah, he's taught me a lot of things, just the insightfulness of what he's learned. And I've tried to use that to other people sometimes in situations where they might like need advice. I'm like, well, my dad says, and it has been helpful. But yeah, I guess I would say that.
And I think what's great about that is there was probably a time when you never would have said my dad says because of the bad place that he's in. And now this relationship is so much stronger and so much, I don't know, more real, right?
Yeah.
That you're sharing some of that stuff with other people. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, because he always was, could be described as someone who didn't really show emotion or share his feelings, or kind of always just like masking, I guess, in a way. And since he's been sober and since he's been really involved in AA, he really is like an open book, which he, I'm sure, could attest to, would probably never say that about himself prior to this. We both are very empathetic people. We're very, very alike. So seeing him be sober and seeing more of the empathy, it just, I've always been very overwhelmed being empathic, because you just kind of, you feel everything, you feel other people's energy, and it can be draining. So to kind of have that connection and be able to talk about it has been nice, because I never really felt I could relate to other people with that aspect of myself. So getting it from him, thank you. It's been nice to connect on that level.
I've even noticed, Vincent, in the office, if I were to think back about our conversations 8, 9, 10 years ago, I might ask you a question and there would be a pause and a stare and a think. And it was almost like, the stuff that I'll talk about is we all have this little box in the back of our head that we stuff all this bad stuff in, and we got to keep it tight so we can't let it out on anybody, right? And it was almost like there was always something stuffed in that box that you were afraid might come out. And since, right, over these past few years, our conversations are flowing and you're open and you're honest with whatever it is that you happen to be dealing with or have a question about. Have you noticed that change in yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Since the AA program, I'm a completely different person, 180 degrees. I've gone from being about myself to trying to help anyone else in any situation. So if I can help someone else anywhere, anyhow, I'm just there to help them. If my experience can help someone, I try to help them. So if you ask me a question in your office, if I think if I have been through it and I have any experience, I try to give it. What has worked for me. This is what's worked for me. Will it work for them? I don't know. This is what worked for me.
And
I'd be dead if I didn't walk in your office. I would be dead right now.
you did the hard work, right? You figured it out, and all of these journeys, they're not easy, right? All of us have, sort of bumps along the way as you go through life, and you got to figure it out.
That's the great thing about this community, you know, or, especially small town community. is there are people there who want to help you figure it out. You know, once you get your little group, and AA is mine, you know, everyone there wants to see everyone else succeed. No one wants to kneecap your success. You know, they all want to see each other succeed. Because if you can do it, then I can do it.
It so different from business, right? So in American business and in competition, we're sort of taught, let's step on that guy's neck right next to us. Let me beat you down and take every penny from you so I can have a little bit more for my family and my neck of the woods and I don't know that I feel that's right. You know, there's plenty of business for all of us. We don't need to have all of it. Why not share a little bit? And I think in our small town community, we do a good job of trying to help one another most of the time, right? Would you say that was your experience before AA, or did you feel like other people were trying to step on your neck more?
As long as I didn't get too much, they would help. As long as I wasn't getting too close to them,
Yeah.
they would help.
I love it. Did you have a specific mentor through this? You know, was there one guy or one girl, or what do you call it in the AA? Is it mentor in the AA world? There's a language.
They call them a sponsor.
Sponsor.
I had several, which is not uncommon. The first one was actually my best friend, who was also my boss. He lived in Florida, but because he was so far away, he kind of found another sponsor for me, who was just a little too religious for me, and I kind of felt that his thoughts were becoming my thoughts, and I was losing myself. So that didn't really work out. I mean, he helped me a lot. Love the guy. He's a great guy. He's got 40 some years sober. And then I just kind of found my own person, just from being in and out of the rooms. Found a person who had the type of sobriety that I wanted. Still liked to have fun, still had family and all that other stuff. And, you know, I just chose him to help me through the steps. And he did. And so now that's what I do. You know, I help people get through this stuff as best I can.
How has your, you know, sort of overall perspective on life changed, you know, kind of before and after?
I have a reason to get up in the morning. You know,
That's
life is good. I mean, like anything. I mean, there are good days and bad days, but you know, life sucks better without a drink.
That's a great way to phrase it.
Yeah.
How do you stay where you are? You know, so I have a little bit of an addictive personality. I had a rough day at work today. Somebody threw Oreos in front of me. You know, I had a sleeve of Oreos in about a minute, right? There is no reason for anyone to eat a sleeve of Oreos in a minute. And I kind of couldn't stop, right? And I imagine alcohol is 1,000 times more powerful for certain people. As you were starting this and knowing that you might go through a little bit of withdrawal as you're doing it, what were the tricks or the thoughts or the mind games that you would play to yourself to kind of push away the drink as you were starting with all this?
My big thing, once I started, I did not want to have to get another 24-hour coin in front of everyone again. So, and that was the beginning. And if that's what it is, you know, then that's good enough for anyone. If that's what gets anyone through it, you know, in the beginning, then that's good enough. Let's get your mind clear, and then we can get busy.
How many
And we can get to
24-hour coins did you get?
A lot, a lot. They're all different colors, and if I threw them all up in the air, it'd be like that Skittles commercial. So there's no shame in that. Some people only ever get one. But that wasn't my path. But once I took it serious, that was it. It was just the one.
Tell me about your position now in sort of AA and what your role is there now and how that's changed over the past handful of years.
Man, there's been a couple real. When I started going through the steps, that of course is exciting. once once you're learning and you're getting it. I had kind of a hard time for the first year and couple months because I always wanted to drink. The desire to drink never went away. I always wanted to drink, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could make it. And the AA book has never lied to me, and things went kind of just like the book says. And I was about ready to throw the towel in because I'd had enough after a year, and I had been pretty much through the steps, and it didn't seem to be working. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting in the room, and I had noticed that I didn't desire a drink, and I couldn't remember the last time that I did want to drink. And that's exactly how it says what's going to happen in the book. Just one day, that's the way it's going to work. And that was a great day, and so then I could continue on with the program, and things got better. So then about 8 months later, the same kind of feeling was going on. I'm getting complacent a little bit, and I'm like, I don't want this to be the rest of my life. I don't want to have to go to a meeting, once or twice a day for the rest of my life. This isn't for me, because you get that forgetter thing working, and you forget how bad your life was before you came into these rooms, before you got sober. All of a sudden, it wasn't so bad. But it was. And what had happened was I had been through the steps, so obviously I knew everything there was to know about AA, but I hadn't sponsored anyone, and someone asked me to sponsor them. And when I started that process, which is to bring someone else through the steps, that just changed my whole life again. And because I got to see someone else getting well. I got to see, them go from being red-faced and puffied and confused to understanding that they could live a sober life, that they could live a life without a drink, and I could watch their life get better, every day. Because when you put the bottle down, your life gets better, from that moment. The minute you stop drinking, your life starts to get better. And then it gets stagnant for a little bit, and then good things happen, and then, as you're doing the steps, just good things seem to fall in line. And in the rooms, you meet good people, and, there's a lot of professionals, there's a lot of workers, and between all of those people, just good things happen. If you don't have a job, you wind up getting a job through these people. If you need help because you own a business, sometimes you find people who come to work for you in these rooms. Just good things happen. So that's good for everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing something, and their life is just getting better. So, but sponsoring people is helping people through the steps and watching that. It's got to be somewhat how you feel when someone walks in your office and they get well. There's no feeling better than that.
There isn't, right? So for me, the thing that brings me the most joy is when I can help someone flip that ignition switch, right? I talk about Matthew McConaughey a lot in his book Green Light, right? And so when I'm talking to people, sometimes there's just this green light, and you can see it happen. And sometimes you don't even know you're doing it, right? But then they tell you about it later, and you walk out of it like, whew, this is pretty good. I like that, and it sounds like you had that same feeling as you were starting to sponsor people. Sarah, as he was going through this, he's describing some setbacks, right? He's describing geez, it was hard to do this. Being around him all the time, did you see it like, a step back? Did you get worried? What did you notice as he was going through all this?
So I never got worried because of like a certain thing, I guess. It's just kind of always in the back of your mind because I get the saying is like you could relapse anytime. You can never say that I'm 100% going to be sober for the rest of my life because stuff happens. But I do remember the flip from him kind of saying like I still think about drinking and I still kind of have to fight that desire to when he's like, I've been cured of the malady, which I guess is the term they use in the book. And he just knows I don't need to drink, I shouldn't drink, and I don't have the desire anymore. But him sponsoring people is definitely, again, where I saw that real change, because he does it after hours at Eagle in his office with them, so I'll come in at the end of the day, and I've also been to a few different AA meetings or functions with him, and a lot of people have said just great things about him. Like, your dad is amazing. I wouldn't be where I am today without him. And that's always nice to hear. I mean, I see it every day. I mean, I know that he's a helpful person, but just to hear other people really just have that gratitude, and seeing also the sponsees, like, as they go through it, I can see the changes in them as well, which I think is a big part and due to him. So, yeah.
You're helping people find their green light, right? And then when there's a setback, you're readjusting, right, to help them get through the bumps, right? If there's someone out there that's struggling now, what's the first step, Vince? What would you say to someone that's, trying to figure out how to put that, last drink down?
Really, they have to want to do it. They have to get honest with themselves. They have to want to do it. You can't help someone who doesn't want to do it. No one could help me.
Nope.
It has to be their choice. It's unfortunate, and a lot of people don't understand this, but helping someone can find their bottom could actually kill them.
Yeah.
Because they're not ready. If they don't find their own bottom, and you help them to it, when they do relapse, they may relapse so hard that they die. So all I can do is walk the walk, and if they want to follow it, then I will help them. If they can see how much better my life has become since I quit drinking, if they want that, then they can have it. And I can show them, thousands of other people, hundreds I know personally. If they want that, then they can have it. But you have to want it.
Is when you're sponsoring someone, right, and all of us in life, have setbacks, right? There's bumps, and I imagine a lot of alcoholics, when they have the bump, they're looking for the answer in the bottom of some bottle somewhere, because it numbs the world, right, for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to them about which step, which process? What do you say to them to help them get over that little bump?
A drink's not going to make anything better, and I'll be there in 5 minutes. Doesn't matter what time. Doesn't matter what time. Doesn't matter. But eventually, you get to the point where it's just you and God.
Yeah.
So you've got to. You have to believe. You have to, but that takes time. Until then, there's me.
Yeah.
Or someone in the room. That's why you
sponsor.
Yeah, that's why you have to buddy up. That's why you have to find someone to help you through this. But once you reach that point, there's going to come a time when it's just you and your thoughts, and then, the big book maybe.
It sounds like at this point the big motivator for you is, how can I help other people? Right? Is that most of it?
Yep, that is it. And then the whole point of the 12 steps is to be able to help another sick and suffering alcoholic. Find God and help another alcoholic. And that's what I do.
Is there a favorite step, that you apply more than others? Is there, is it always a progression? I'm not necessarily familiar with all the steps.
Yeah, well, step 12, of course, because that's where you help other alcoholics. Practice the steps every day. And step 4, where, I make a fearless inventory of basically what's going on. It's more about resentments, finding out what my part is, why I'm upset about something. Um, uh, if someone's made me mad, why am I mad about this particular situation? Because I can't afford to get mad. I can't afford to have a lasting anger, because that'll make you drink. That'll drive you nuts.
Would you have ever asked yourself that question before?
No, it was always your fault. Always, if the guy in front of me is going too slow, what's my part? Well, I should have started earlier. I'm the one that's running late. It's not his fault that, he's doing 55 and I want to do 75.
Yep.
I'm the one who's late. It's not him. It's a little old man, a little old lady. It's not their fault. That's where they are in life. It's a student driver. We all go through that. I can't really get angry about that stuff.
Is there stuff that you do? We all have these moments, right, where we can feel our emotions kind of going like this, right? The slow driver when you're late.
Yeah.
Is there stuff that you actively do in your mind and that when that happens to kind of bring yourself back down?
I say the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity, accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I actually wear it on my finger
I love it.
because I say it so often.
And do you find when you do that, it kind of brings you down?
Absolutely.
Sarah,
I'm
do you
not
have
the
similar stuff? Have you learned some of that from him? Geez, when I'm starting to get worked up or angry or flustered.
Um, I'm not really an angry person, so I've never been someone to like really express it like that. So I kind of, it's more, I take time to myself to kind of
Step away.
regroup. Yeah, I have to step away. I definitely have to step away. And there's not a lot of things in my life that make me angry except for customers, at work sometimes. So that is really when I see it the most. And that's when I'm just like, okay, I need to end this conversation because we're not getting anywhere and I'm going to go over my boiling point basically. But I've noticed the change in him for that of being, because he was definitely someone just flip a switch and just off the rails. But most of the time, he was pretty calm, cool, and collected. But the times where the anger really got to him, he was like a different person then. I could see it in his face and his eyes, and it's a little triggering sometimes to think about, like as a kid, But I've seen it a lot, situations where he would have reacted differently, but having the steps and going through that, he doesn't. And I think a big thing that I try to remember is when someone else is making you angry or does something that you're just like, why you're doing this, why would you do this to me, whatever, he says, I pray for them because there's something they're lacking or they're going through, and I hope that they find the peace or whatever it is to not act that way, I guess.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I do think about that a lot, that it may not be their fault, they're going through something or whatever. So try to take that into consideration with how I react to a situation.
Vince, did you have any of that before? Before you
No.
went through these struggles, could you have ever said, geez, Susie, you obviously are behaving this way because you must be going through some stuff. Let me pray for you, right? Would that have ever entered your mind?
No, no. My default was anger, and I don't really care what you're going through. This is what I want.
Yep.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it's hard. Why do you start? 100 years ago, why do you start drinking? Why do you think people, is it culture? Is it social norm? Is it that it's plastered on every football commercial ever? Why do you think people start?
I think everyone has a different reason. For me, it was just culture.
Yeah.
My family was extremely poor, probably the poorest family we knew. But we always had, well, there was always booze around.
Yeah.
And so it was just what we did. And just everyone, everyone in my family was an alcoholic. I think I think it's mostly genetic, actually. So once I had that first drink, I was done.
I think there's a lot to it, right? Some of it I think is genetic, but alcohol is an insanely addictive substance, right? And so when you mix a little bit of genes and a little bit of an insanely addictive substance, it can be a battle for a lifetime.
Yeah.
I think when you learned about the genetics of it and how a genetic alcoholic processes alcohol differently in their body, I think that was also like another moment that really helped him, just like knowing why he was different than other people, because I think that's a big thing that you're like, well, they can drink, and so I should be able to too, but not everybody can process it the same way. So some people can have a couple drinks and then they're good, they're set, whereas an alcoholic is they're going till they drop, basically.
Well, that was one of the things I had to figure out, that I needed to know. That was one of the last pieces before I could get sober, was understanding, well, how my body was different and how I processed alcohol, probably most drugs. You know, I act differently to drugs. I react differently to drugs. But alcohol, so as it was explained to me, the way that my body metabolizes it is it goes from, or anyone's body metabolizes it, goes from alcohol to acetaldehyde to acetate to a simple carbohydrate, and then we expel it through urine or breathing it out. With the alcoholic, it doesn't get past the acetate stage, and the acetate is what causes the craving, and in the big book they call it the allergy. So Dr. Silkworth, back in 1935, called it an allergy, but he didn't know why, didn't know what it was. And then they figured out it was the acetate. So the acetate causes the allergy. So while a normal person expels that, after, 2 or 3 drinks, they want to go home. Where I I don't get rid of it. So the craving is in me, the acetate's in me, and after 3 or 4 drinks, I've got 4 times the craving as a normal person does. I'm never stopping.
Yeah.
I'm just,
You're in.
I'm fired up.
Yeah.
We're going. After a
I'm just
12,
getting
after a
going.
12 pack, I'm going to be in a different state.
Yeah. Do you have a different relationship with alcohol now, Sarah? Do you get scared about it or shy away from it or choose not to partake at all?
So I do still partake. When I was in college, I definitely went overboard with it, and learning that about probably my body, process it differently made a lot of sense. Because I would be around my friends and they're like, well, I'm like, I'm good. And I'm like, well, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
So I do still, but it much less than I did then. But I am wary of it due to knowing all about it. So probably without that, I probably would have be in the same position that he was. But I'm definitely more careful about it. Probably shouldn't do it at all, but
Yeah, I think from my perspective is I've read a ton about health and longevity in the past year. If I could be a teetotaling vegetarian or vegan, I would live the longest and feel the best, and there is no doubt in my mind. But God, I love a steak and a glass of red
Right.
wine, right?
Yeah.
And how do you go, no, I don't ever want to have that again, right? And
Right.
it gets really complicated. And I have, to share some of my own experiences, my mom struggled with this. When my dad died, my mom was drunk for years. And I couldn't get her out of hey, you got a new granddaughter. Hey, look at all these great things. And she would still be, vodka in a coffee cup every day when I would go to check on her.
And that's hard as the family member because you're kind of like, why am I not enough or why is this not enough? Especially like having a kid, being like, hello, like why is that not enough for you to want to change? But it's the disease, really.
So hard,
Yeah.
right? And for me personally, right? So I've gone through some stuff lately. And my last bad moment was at my daughter's graduation party. We have celebrated so many things, and at that point in my life, my marriage was kind of falling apart, and I knew it was falling apart. And I couldn't see that I was celebrating my daughter. All I saw that day was, this is all falling apart. How can I hold this together? And I couldn't figure it out. And it was hard to talk to people. I couldn't figure out what to say, right? And the next thing you know, instead of 3 glasses of wine, it's 4 tequilas, right? And then I'm completely out of it, and they have to carry me off and put me on a couch and let me sober up in the back. And what a really awful thing for my daughter to see on a day when I should have been there celebrating her. And when you come through after that moment, I realize I'm really no different than my mom was, right? And yeah, there was an excuse. I'm going through some stuff, right? My mom lost her husband. That was some stuff,
Right.
right? But at the end of the day, there's no answers in the bottom of that bottle, no matter how bad life gets.
Right.
And to hear you say, no matter what's going on, it ain't going to get better if you have a drink, right? I think that's, for me personally, that's a great message, right? And I think more people need to hear that.
Because it's kind of like, when has it ever helped?
Yeah.
And how many times has it made it worse
Yeah.
by doing that? So, yeah.
Is that the, in your 12-step stuff, is that the I'm sorries? Is that the, geez, I'm sorry I did this. I'm sorry I did that. I'm sorry I behaved this way. You know,
You didn't really apologize that
Well-
much during the thick of it, probably, but
Just during the thick of it. Yeah, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. But
Yeah.
how many times can you say that?
right.
Because I was saying it every day,
yeah.
and so eventually the sorries are worthless. Now it's just every day it's a living amends. I just don't drink, and I go to a meeting, and I try to help other people, and that's my sorry.
I love it.
I walk it.
It's, anything else that you want to share that is important to either one of you as we're, sort of coming to a close, and anything else that's super important in your world that you want to share with people that you think might make a difference?
Just that, like Sarah was kind of hit on a little bit, that when an alcoholic or a drug addict, when they're in their full throes, it has nothing to do with anyone else. It's not that they don't love their family. It's not that I didn't love my family. It's not that I didn't want to stop. It's not that they don't want to stop. It's that they can't. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with weakness. It has nothing to do with will. It's they cannot stop until they get that higher power thing working. It's a God thing. They're beyond human power. And anyone who can stop because of on their own will, they're not an alcoholic. Because the definition of an alcoholic is being beyond human will. So that's one thing that people don't understand. They say, why can't he stop? He's got a beautiful wife, he's got a beautiful family, he's got everything to live for. Why can't he stop? He's dying because he can't. I went to a doctor, and he told me that I was going to die. I don't want to say his name. And I stopped and got 2 bottles of vodka on the way home. I couldn't stop. And the baffling thing is, my liver was hurting, and it was swollen, but, I drink a quarter bottle of vodka and it stops hurting.
Yeah.
Like, oh, must be good. Good to go, right? And then I stop and it starts screaming at me again. Well, probably ought to have more.
Yeah,
But
that's how it goes, right?
but it's a matter of it's not a matter of will. It's a matter of cannot.
Sarah, anything else you want to share?
So I think one of the things that you've learned and you live by that I think about the most is doing the next right thing. So when something happens and you can't control it or whatever, your response is to be, well, what is the next right thing I can do? Instead of a negative thing or, reacting negatively towards someone else. It's what is the next right thing I can do? And that kind of, I think everybody should kind of live by that,
Yeah, I love
is instead of doing a toxic thing to, no matter what the situation is, to think, okay, so what is the next right thing that I can do?
I love that. You guys, I can't thank you enough for sharing this, Vince. I'm so proud of where you've come. I know how hard it was for you to get through this. Sarah, thank you for sharing. I know so much of this stuff is emotional and personal, and I think as a fellow empath, I think that's the stuff that helps move people and get them going in the right direction. So again, you guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate the
Yeah, thank you for
opportunity.
having us. Yeah.
Paul, how'd we do? Fantastic. Oh, I